to this is that in the first 3 seconds, the inmate died instantly because of the size of the voltage. Usually, he reached about 140 degrees body temperature, which was sufficient to boil the brain.
Sing Sing's first electrocution was performed in 1891 in a chair nicknamed Old Sparky. At this time, 3 New York prisons had electric chairs, but in 1914 it was decided to build the state's only death house at Sing Sing.
There's a growing recognition that it ought to be done in one site where a kind of specialty develops in taking care of this. The prison officials, for example, took great pains to prevent inmates from committing suicide. There are examples of heroic surgery to save inmates who ingested various things they found in an effort to kill themselves to cheat the chair. No one should be allowed to cheat the chair.
614 electrocutions were performed at Sing Sing, the last in 1963. It seems the deaths were almost always at the center of an emotional and contentious debate. In 1920, the flamboyant investigative journalist Nellie Bly became the first woman to witness an electrocution. The subject was one Gordon Hamby. Hamby tried to be blasé about the electric chair. As he was strapped in, he told the witnesses he'd gladly try anything once. But Nellie Bly was horrified by the proceedings, calling for an end to this punishment. She wrote, "Thou shalt not kill." Was that commandment meant alone for Hamby, or did it mean all of us? 1928 brought new controversy when Ruth Snyder and her lover, Judd Gray, were executed for the brutal murder of Snyder's husband. One of the witnesses to Snyder's electrocution was a New York Daily News photographer who had secretly strapped a camera to his leg. The next morning, Snyder's final moment was on the front page of papers across the country, causing a national outcry against the electric chair. In 1944, Louis Lepke Buckhalter was executed. He was the head of the U.S. crime syndicate and its enforcement arm, Murder Incorporated. 2 of Buckhalter's flunkies, Louis Capone and Emanuel Mendy Weiss, also died in the chair that night. Loyal to the end, Capone and Weiss ordered the same dinner as their boss. Lepke assured them the fix was in and they wouldn't die. Lepke was wrong. But perhaps the most controversial of all was the 1953 electrocution of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, the young couple who were convicted of selling atomic bomb secrets to the Russians. Their sentence triggered violent protest, and the execution became one of the most celebrated media events of the era. Crowds gathered outside the prison waiting for a reprieve from the Supreme Court or President Eisenhower. But the order never came, and the Rosenbergs became the first civilians executed for treason in the United States. Rabbi Irving Koslow was the prison chaplain at the Rosenbergs' execution and has been present at 17 electrocutions. Koslow would counsel the condemned man for years before his execution. From this experience, he has a rare insight into the psychology of the condemned inmate and death by the electric chair.
The major difference between dying in a hospital and dying at the chair is a major difference. Was that in a hospital, a patient never knew the exact moment they might leave this world. Whereas when you put an electric chair, you knew in advance that, at least the Sing Sing, at Thursday night, 11 o'clock, you would be in that chair, and a minute or so later, you would be dead.
Executions all followed a similar sequence. The day before, the condemned man is moved from the death row cell block to a group of cells near the electric chair, an area known as the dance hall. Here, final preparations are made, including shaving the convict's head. Koslow would comfort the inmate through these final preparations. On Thursday, Koslow would spend the entire day with the inmate and accompany him until the end.
I would spend time in that cell with him. And all day long, we'd prayer, a conversation, what exactly was going to happen in that execution room, life after death. A variety of topics were covered. Comfort. Was it painful? To me, death was moving along slowly but surely.
At about 6 p.m., he is offered his last meal.
For Last Supper, they're given anything they want at 6 o'clock. Not one inmate or one person that was ever touched any of that food. They could order steaks and ice cream, and they sent it all to back to the wings they came from, back to the death house, inmates.
Finally, the excruciating wait draws to a close, and the guards come for the condemned man.
By the time a knock on the door came, which was about 1 or 2 minutes to 11, as far as I was concerned, that man or woman was half dead. Really, he was no longer as articulate or as responsive as he had been Wednesday and Thursday, you see, all day. And I'd tell him, look, follow me. There'll be 2 correctional on either side of you walking down this corridor, which is maybe 20 feet, no last mile, 20 feet of corridor. And as we got close to the door, it would swing open. I told the man, it's going to swing open. You'll be taken by the 2 correctional officers. Don't make any comments, because any statement you make to either the officers or to the witnesses or reporters who may be there will be misinterpreted and won't be accurate. I know that. There'll be 2 men inside beside a wooden chair. They'll seat you down quickly. They're going to put something over your eyes. Electrodes will be tied to your head and to your leg. It'll be very quick. I'll be as close to you as I am to you now. I'll stand right in front of you. I'll be on a rubber mat, but I'll be there and I'll offer some prayer. An appropriate prayer that we offer for a person who's going to leave this world. And that's all I can do. As soon as they're strapped in, there's a motion to the electrocutioner, and he would lower the electrode. And that was the first shot. Then another shot. The doctor would run over and open the shirt and test him. He said, this man is dead. I'd seen death many times before, both as a rabbi in the army and so forth. So I wasn't shaken by death. But it is a different experience, because I knew at that moment that man was going to die. And it's something you never forget.
In 1965, the death penalty was abolished in New York State. 30 years later, it was reinstated. But future executions will be performed by lethal injection. Sing Sing holds the unusual distinction of being the only prison with a railroad running through it. Undoubtedly, more than one escape attempt has been inspired by the hope of hopping on board. The most notorious and bloody breakout came in April of 1941. Charles McGale, John Waters, and Joseph Reardon escaped through the prison hospital, killing a guard and later a local policeman. The daring attempt had been planned for more than 10 months with the help of several accomplices on the outside. The plan was set in motion on March 22nd, when 3 guns were smuggled into the prison, strapped underneath a milk delivery truck. Waters hid the weapons in the hospital, where he worked as an orderly. McGale was a prison trustee who had access to tools and rope. He was also an expert locksmith. He made keys to a steam tunnel that ran from the hospital basement outside the prison. On the night of April 13th, Reardon and Begale faked illnesses and checked into the hospital. Waters slipped them the guns. At 2 a.m., the men made their move.